That's right, we're finally doing an After Effects tutorial. Hey guys, you're watching Tansky, the place to be to develop your creative skills. In this tutorial, we're going to be jumping into After Effects and learning how to create a falling snow effect all from scratch. Now, I know a number of you have been asking for After Effects tutorials for a while, and the reason I've not done it sooner is I've just not been as proficient in After Effects as some of the other Adobe apps. However, there are some awesome tutorials out there on YouTube that have really helped me develop my skills, so without further ado, let's jump into it. Rightio, so we're now in After Effects, we've created a new document, and the first thing to do is create a new composition. So a composition is similar to a sequence in Premiere Pro, and you can have multiple compositions in one After Effects document. And each composition gets its own set of layers down here, and its own timeline over here. So first of all, let's go to Composition at the top and select New Composition. And you've got lots of settings here. I'm going to give this the name Snow. And you can set your width and height to whatever you like. It might be 1920 by 1080. I'm going to go with 800 by 600, the size of a high-res dribble shot, and something a bit smaller so my laptop doesn't melt. So the frame rate 30, that is good. You can choose which resolution you preview playback in. So we'll leave that set at full for now. You can also set the duration. So I've got 30 seconds here. And the background color, but I'm just going to go with black. And click OK. And if you need to edit any of those settings, just go to Composition, Composition Settings, and there you go, you've got all of those options there. So it's created the new composition, and if I go over to the project panel here, you can see we have that new comp, and it's automatically added it down here as well. So you can see Snow is listed, and as you add or open more compositions, they just run as tabs across this section here. Now, if you're looking at this thinking, my screen doesn't look like this, that's fine. Just go up to Window, down to Workspace. You've got lots of different workspaces to choose from. I'm using the standard one, and I've customized it a little bit by introducing a few extra panels, but similar to the other Adobe apps, you can turn these panels on and off, drag them around until you customize your workspace exactly how you like it. Okay, so we've got our new comp created, we've got our layers section and our timeline here ready to go. We're just going to import one more thing. File, Import, and File. And that's going to be an image here. So I'm just going to import this image of a photographer with these settings and click Open. And if you'd like to download this project file, I will also link this in the video description. So you can see it's imported the photographer above our composition. We're just going to drag this image from the project window inside that snow composition, and you can see it adds it as a layer, and then we now have some stuff on our timeline. Now, of course, this image is quite high res, so it's far too big. So if we just click the arrow here and just twirl this down, we get a few more settings. We can change position, scale, rotation, opacity, loads of stuff. We're just going to click and drag to the left to bring that scale down. Now you can click and drag, or you can simply click, enter a value, and press return, and it will scale to that size. So let's collapse those panels. Okay, so we've added an image. This is kind of a nice to have, a bit of icing on the cake, but we'll turn that off for now and actually start creating this particle effect. So first of all, let's go to Layer, New, and Solid. And I'm going to very appropriately name this layer Particles Effect. I'm going to leave all of the sizes the same, and the color, black is absolutely fine. Click OK, and you can see it now adds that solid to our snow composition, and it's also listed up here as well. So with this Particles Effect solid selected, we're going to go up to Effect, down to Simulation, and there's lots of fun to be had here, playing with all these different effects, but the one we're going to be using for this tutorial is CC Particle World. And you can see it adds this to the Effect Controls panel, and we can turn this off and on by clicking the Effects icon. And the first thing I'm going to do is twirl down the Grid and Guides section and just turn off all of these grids and guides, especially that perspective grid. Next, what I'm going to do is just twirl down all of the other panels. Now there's a lot of settings in here and it can be quite intimidating at first, but don't worry, we're going to go through them in a moment. So we can preview the default particle world effect by pressing the play or stop button here, or just spacebar on the keyboard. And you can see what we get is anything but snow, but that's fine. And we can scrub through this by just clicking where the playhead is on the timeline and just dragging to the left and the right. So first of all, we have the birth rate. This is the rate at which new particles are spawned. And if I bring this all the way up, you can see it becomes considerably more dense. And if I drag this to the left, it becomes a lot more sparse. Now the longevity below is how long each particle lasts for. So I could drag this all the way to the left and you can see the particles are spawned and they disappear very quickly. Or you can drag it to the right and they will stick around all the way to the edge of the composition. But again, we can go and adjust that a bit further in a moment. So let's collapse those. Next, we've got the producer section. We can adjust the position. We don't want to do that, but we do want to adjust the radius because at the moment our particle effect is in the center and we're creating snow. So we want this to fill the entire composition area. So let's drag radius X to the right, this value here. Radius X is the horizontal axis. And then below we've got radius Y, the vertical axis. And then underneath we've got radius Z, which is depth, that is bringing it out towards you to create more depth. And we can go and tweak all of these a bit more in a moment because having depth when you've got snow is really, really useful because you've got some particles in the foreground, some are in the background, so it really does help create depth within the composition. Okay, next we're on to physics. Animation, explosive. Well, that doesn't sound right to me, but we are going to use directional axes. So you can see now that changes the animation style and it comes in from the left all the way to the right. Now the velocity is set to 1, this is the speed effectively. If we change that from 1 to 0.01, you can see it's now considerably slower, but it's also just falling from the top to the bottom. And the reason is because we've dropped the velocity or the speed so much, these particles are being spawned and then they're literally just falling. If I crank up the velocity to 10, you can see they're just firing across the screen. So we'll go with 0.01 for the velocity. And you can adjust the gravity and the resistance as well if you want, but we'll leave those as they are for now. The next one we're going to pay attention to is the gravity vector. Now at the moment, the gravity Y is at a value of 1, X and Z is at 0. If we adjust the X, you can see we start to create an angle. So if I go, let's say, -1 or -0.5, just so we have a slight angle on our particles, this just helps simulate snow a bit more effectively, as if there's some wind moving the snow, because of course snow doesn't just fall perfectly vertically straight to the ground. Okay, there we go. So we're pretty much finished with the physics section. Next, we're onto the particle section, and the first thing we're going to do is change the particle type from line to, well, have a lot of fun with these. There's lots of different particle types here. You can create all manner of crazy things, but we're going to be using faded sphere for this tutorial. So we have those circles with a nice soft glow around the edge. Now here it says birth size and death size. So the birth size is the size of a particle when it is born, when it's spawned in. The death size is when it leaves. So if I bring this down, so it's nice and small, so particles spawn in really small, and the death size is a little bit larger. And I can also crank up the size variation. So if I bring it down, the particles become a lot more similar in size. If I crank this up, it creates a lot more variety. And because snow and the size of snow and all that is pretty random, we want to get something that is as random as possible. And you can change the opacity as well. I like the fact it's at 75. I don't want everything to be 100% just because it just looks too fake. But we'll set that to 75. And of course you can set the birth and the death color, but because this is snow, we're going to go with white. White throughout. So there we go, we can preview some of those changes now. And we've created something that is a bit more reminiscent of snow. Now we can go back to some of these settings that we changed at the beginning. So the birth rate, if we crank this up, we're getting much more towards a blizzard. So you can see something like this, and we can bring it down and it's a lot more subtle. So I'm going to keep this quite low. And the longevity, of course, if you bring it down, these particles, they don't stick around very long. We want our snow to run through the entire scene. So if I just bring this up somewhere like this, that looks pretty good to me. So we've created the snow particle effect, but at the moment it's just too fast. It's still way too fast. So what we're going to do is right click on the particles effect layer and then go pre-compose. Make sure you have this one here selected, move all attributes into the new composition. And you can give this a name if you want to. Click OK, and it effectively turns this into another composition. So we can double click this and go inside it, and we've still got our particle effect there. And you can see it just appears here as another tab, and we can close that back down to go back to our main composition. But now what we can do is, now we've pre-composed that, we can right click it and select time and go enable time remapping. Now just make sure that your playhead here, as you can see, it's created two keyframes, one here at the start and one at the end. Just make sure your playhead is on that first keyframe at the beginning, and you can see time remap has appeared and it starts set at 0. So if we click on this here, we could change this to, let's say, we'll type in 15 seconds and press return. And if we now play through this, you can see our snow is a lot slower, and you can see it's just trying to render that there. So let it play through a couple times and it will slowly get a bit smoother. There we go. So that is much more like real snow. And something else we can do is we can select this particle effects layer as well. And here we have motion blur. So if I just check this box here, it means our snow will also have a very subtle motion blur effect applied to it, which seems very relevant as the snow does have motion. And the last thing we're going to do is just switch back on our photographer image, and we have our particle effect comp on top of that image, and we can play it through.
And there we go. That's how to create falling snow in After Effects, all from scratch. I think that went rather well. So if you'd like to download the source files for this, they are linked in the video description. There is also a link to my Patreon if you'd like to find out more information. If you've got any questions or comments about anything we did today in the tutorial, please do drop them down below. But as always, like this video if you enjoyed it, take care, and I'll see you next time.